Good evening and welcome to the PSSL Creative Group meeting for the month of September. There were a couple of members who were unable to join today. Mitra sent his regrets and Ravi sent his regrets that he's to join because of an office meeting. I can see a few non-creative group members also joining. Let me welcome all of you to this meeting, and for the benefit of those who are not members of the creative group, let me very briefly touch on what we do. It's actually a group of PSSL members who are into creative photography, and what we are trying to do is to help each other to develop our creative capabilities. Creative capabilities are not essentially only Photoshop driven. What we are trying to do is, it's a threefold exercise. Initially, we want to develop our in-camera creative capability. Later today, Laya will be making a presentation on some of those aspects. The second area is actually we are going to develop our creative capability by setting up pictures. It is not again Photoshop, but it is the setting up of a picture before we take it rather than just capturing a picture. The third area is obviously when we go into compositing and using a software, either Photoshop or any other software that is suitable to composite images and create visual stories. So we are taking it one step at a time, and this is the third meeting we are having. We had the inaugural meeting 2 months ago. Then last month we had a very interesting, very nice presentation done by Manju on her creative process, and we have just launched something what we call the creative challenge for the benefit of the creative group members, and I encourage all the members to take part in this because this is where we actually help each other to develop the creative challenge. And also now we have a Facebook group and a WhatsApp group. WhatsApp group is basically mainly intended to communicate messages of what is happening within the group. But the more active area is in the Facebook page where members post their pictures on creative work that they have done. Others are expected to help by providing feedback by way of what they see, areas that are nice or good about it, and areas what they think can be improved upon. So it's a help each other sort of a process. Everyone is encouraged to submit or post their pictures and also get feedback and give feedback. We just started this month what is called the Creative Challenge, and I have set up a challenge period of two weeks for each technique. Now here we are actually looking at in-camera techniques and then going into the creative setup by the end of the last fortnight of the third month of this period. What I expect and what we want us, the members to do is to submit pictures that they have done using these different techniques during this period. You can post any other picture, but predominantly we would encourage you all to put in these pictures because that's where we encourage and get hands-on experience in developing these techniques. I have also shared with the members a small document explaining what these techniques are very briefly, and we'll be following up more extensively with links to various sites and information so that you all can do your own research and develop the techniques that we are trying to develop. Hopefully at some point in time when we can have physical meetings, we will get together, have some sessions, trying to learn, trying to practice, and then get each other's help to improve our capabilities. If you have not got it, it's actually posted on our Facebook page. You can have a look at it. I've already also shared earlier some links to Zoom effect, how to do it and what sort of things can be done, and a few other links. I'll keep on posting these things. Now, the member feedback, as I said, is to give at least 2 things that you like about a picture and 2 things that you think can help the author to improve the creation. I would like to again repeat that creativity, there is no right or wrong. Each one has its own freedom to do whatever they want. It's in the eye of the viewer. There can be various things that they can see, which can be good, which can be points to improve upon. So please help in doing that, sharing your thoughts. Any creative work will be read differently by each individual, whether it is an author or whether it is a person viewing, reviewing, or critiquing. So there is no one way of explaining or understanding a picture. But in giving this feedback, please be honest about what you're doing and be civil in making your comments and expressing your ideas. On the part of the author, I would expect them to be humble in accepting positive comments and feedback, and also take the negative comments as a process for improving our own thing. But once again, there is no right or wrong. The author is at full freedom to either accept or reject anything that is being proposed, but everyone is giving their honest and honest feedback for everyone's benefit. So that's basically what we are doing. And the next 3 months plan, we will be having our next meeting on the first Thursday of the next month. That is what we decided. But Mitra only had a problem, who is unable to join because he has some sort of a church meeting or whatever happening on the first Thursday. We also have a slight difficulty next month because the 1st of October, which is going to be the first Thursday, is Poya again. So we will have to take a call whether we are going to have it on the 1st or shift it to another date. Let's decide that later, but let me now quickly go on to the main activity of today's meeting, where own member Laya is making a presentation on his experiments, creative experiments, and his experience in doing so. As a very brief introduction about Laya, as you know, Laya is a member of our EXCO, but something that you may not know is that his association with the PSSL dates back to, I think, early 70s. Much longer than anyone, probably none of us have been associating with the PSSL for that long. He had been into the dark rooms, he had used the dark rooms during the period. As a schoolboy, coming along with his uncle, Mr. Layas. Later, after he migrated to UK for studies and then shifted to Canada, he had been using cameras and doing a lot of traveling. Not only doing traveling, but he's taking photographs and publishing books. He had, I think, done already about 20 different books on travel, pictures that he has taken in his various travels to various overseas destinations. He's an engineer by profession, more precisely into telecommunication and research. And I think we have to thank him for all the benefits that we have for our internet connections being that this fast using copper cable, and then to take us into the fiber era. So Laya is actually a very experienced photographer, but his interest in creative photography was rekindled after he joined our creative group. So he had been doing on his own a lot of experiments during his free time in Canada, and he's going to present to us today some of the experiences, the challenges, and he will be discussing all these things. So over to you, Laya. Thank you.
So thank you, Sam. By the way, that photograph was taken by Sam in 2015. Sam was the person who actually brought me into the PSSL. So thanks, Sam, for that fine photograph. So again, as Sam said, I've been actually in photography for quite a long time, but it was the PSSL and the Sam in particular and the creative group that pushed me in this direction. I got to thinking that I bought a camera, but I'm not used half of it. So I thought, okay, might as well start using these things which I have already paid for. That was another reason for doing that. So the the thing is that basically I'm just focusing on few things that I have done. This is by way of kind of helping people to kind of, learn from some of the mistakes that I have made and some of the experiments that I have done. So the first thing is, by the way, if you want to kind of ask some burning questions, please go and do so. But otherwise, we'll have the question and answer sessions at the end. So let me see whether I can go. Yeah, okay. So this first one is where I actually put the camera on a tripod, and then I use the repeat flash technique on the flash gun to have number of flashes. In this particular case, it's effectively 4-second the exposure I did with the with 4 flashes in that second. And now it's interesting that when you actually turn the camera, this is something I didn't even realize before, that the position of the image on the focal plane changes as you rotate the camera. So this is how I managed to get four pictures, and at each picture it was the flash that was exposing the photograph. So it is quite nice. So this was a kind of an experiment I tried to do, see what actually happens, and this is a kind of a result that I got. I mean, it's not a very fantastic photograph, but at least it actually shows that some of the things that are possible with this repeating flash technology. Another thing that I've learned from the PSSL is to push the ISO low, and we'll talk about it a little later. So in this particular case, I actually kept it at 160. One of the reasons is that I want to increase the aperture, so by closing it down so that you have a little bit of depth of field in here. Now, in the bottom right-hand one, the white light ones, which Sam commented some time back, it's because of the flash. Now, this was, I actually left the saxophone on the in front of the piano. So this is the reflection of the flash on the piano. Now, if that was a black absorbing background, perhaps it would not have actually shown as much, but it shows the technique of doing that. So we can do so many other things. One of the things that I want to try to do that is to use a lamp, see what I can do with that. So the next one is that I again use that one, but in this particular case that I just let the flash go down by the 0.3 EV, and open the aperture that I actually try to take this photograph, nicely light this thing to get some nice lighting effect, and that's the kind of result that you could get. It's quite interesting. Now this is I did 2 things with this. One was the zooming, try to get the zooming effect, and the other one also to get the flash. I tried with the flash to see if I could actually freeze the strings of this guitar in the vibrational modes. It didn't quite work out. So I tried a very long exposure. In this particular case is 2 seconds, 1.3 seconds and 5 seconds respectively. And obviously the 5-second one on the right-hand side is little too much to my liking, because it actually gets rid of the visual effect of the vibrating strings. But the 3 seconds, 1.3 seconds and the 2 seconds seems to be reasonably nice. And in that period, I tried to do the zooming effect also to try to get that effect on the side of the guitar. So it kind of works, but more work is necessary to kind of get a good result. So it kind of gave me some ideas as to what one can do. Again, here I actually used a very small apertures, trying to actually keep the focus as much as possible in that focal plane. Now this is again with a way to the zooming effect. So I actually did several zooming ones. One of the things that I tried was zooming from one end to the other. And as you see, the zoom lens is from 18 to 140 millimeters. So I tried different levels of zooming. The first one on the left-hand side, the top, is not a lot of zoom, but just a little bit. The second one is a little bit more zoom. And then the third one on the right-hand side is a lot more zooming. But my personal preference is that one should not zoom too much. And one can actually zoom just a little bit and still get a reasonably nice effect. So one on the bottom left-hand corner is the one that I like. Now, one of the things that I tried to do was to keep that central point in focus as much as possible. And that was not very easy. So one of the experiments I did was with the aperture. In this case, as you see, the apertures I've actually closed them down completely so that you have a reasonable amount of depth of field that actually makes that center point in focus as much as possible, because I think that is fairly central to the beauty of the zoomed image, keeping that center point in focus. Now, this morning I saw in the Facebook a beautiful photograph. I forget actually who actually took that one. It's a couple. It's a nice silhouette effect, and the zooming is on the lights. It was really nice. I mean, I knew that the lights probably would give a nice zooming effect, but I never actually got to practice it. So it kind of proved the hunch that I had, that the lights probably make a very good subject for zooming. Now, this is again a zoomed one. Again, my point here is, again, the extent of zooming needs to be kind of regulated. Again, these different levels of zooming was done pretty well at 1.3 seconds, 1/3 of a second in one case, that is on the one left on the top one, and 1.3 seconds on both of the other ones. The one on the left, again, I think appears to be a lot better in terms of its effect than the other ones. One on the right is also good, because the center point is in quite nice focus, and the zooming was not as much. Is there a question or no? Now, this one was just an experiment I did where I just happened to be taking this particular photograph, and I used the spot center-weighted metering here. So effectively, in the background was a brick wall and a few other things, but I managed to kind of get rid of it completely. Now, in several photographs that were submitted for the capture this, I noticed this particular effect, and it's quite nice, the black background. So one of the things is that there could be a lot of metering tricks that are possible with these types of photographs. As you see here, I have actually pushed the ISO way up to 3200. That's, I think, the maximum my camera goes. And a very short, very fast shutter speed and a small aperture. So it gives rise to that. So basically, I think it comes with this exposure metering. Now, I'm not sure how much you actually work on it. So I thought I'll do a little bit of a test to show what these different metering effects are. So on the left-hand side on the top, it's a spot metering. I'm metering on that lens. So you can see the lens is very much nicely exposed, but everything else around is highlights are kind of burnt and such like. On the bottom is the normal one, the matrix, or in the Canon parlance, it's evaluative metering. So that brings all of the different objects into reasonable exposure. So you lose a little bit of the details on the lens in this particular case. Now, the one on the right-hand side, bottom, is called center-weighted. Now, so all those three are available, I think, pretty well in all cameras. So the center-weighted is also good. Now, in the previous photograph, I used the center-weighted to make sure that the flower was completely nicely exposed, whereas the rest was completely the black. Now there's another one in my camera that's available that's called highlight weighting. So as you see there, in this particular one on the top right-hand corner, the highlights are now completely in good exposure, but we've lost all the details on the lens. Which is what this highlight weighting is pretty good, especially when you have backlighting. I've tried it several times. It seems to actually give reasonably good results, but I don't have an example here of that backlit subject using highlight weighting. But these are all kinds of things that are available to us. Half the time, we don't use them. We actually stick to metrics or spot metering and then continue to do that. But that's nothing wrong with that. But there are other things that are possible within the camera that we could use to actually get nice effects. So here is, again, I had a lot of comments earlier on. I was doing some macro photography and I kind of put this into the Facebook. Many people, including Sam, basically, and as you see, my ISO is very high because I wanted to actually have a reasonably high shutter speed at a small aperture because I was taking these photographs using a 7 to 300 millimeter Sigma macro lens. And it was very difficult to kind of freeze the bee on this flower. This was just available lighting. But then when the groups at PSSR was telling me that, maybe I should actually go down on ISO. Well, but then when you do that, you lose the shutter speed. So I thought, okay, let me go down on shutter speed, but use the flash instead. So what I did in the bottom photograph was I actually set the manual flash to 1/64th of a power. Now, and ISO at 640 with 125th of a second shutter speed. Now, one of the things about the flash is that it says you reduce the power by at 1/64th of a power, but that's not what actually happens in these strobe lights. What happens is that you keep the same output power, but you reduce the duration of the flash. So in this particular case, the flash duration is around 1/30th of a second. And as you can see, in spite of the fact this bee was really, basically flapping the wings, I could actually freeze it nicely and still get nice photograph that possibly could be blown up a little bit because it has a very low ISO. So again, I think one could actually use these techniques to kind of do this. And I intend to do a little bit more experiments later on with the flash to see how I could actually these freeze movements and so on. This I did with panning and zooming to some extent. This is all panning. The model is my grandsons. So basically I had models that were basically, but they could not be controlled. They were doing what they wanted. I managed to do the panning, and so these are 1/30th of a second, 1/13th of a second. So fairly low shutter speeds. I had to keep the aperture fairly low in order to actually get the right the exposures. Now, one of the interesting things on the left-hand photograph is that, one does not think that one could actually freeze the water droplets. But in this particular case, I managed to freeze them because they were actually being pushed upwards. So they basically reached kind of a terminal velocity of 0 before they turned down. And at 1/25th, you could freeze them. The rest, the water droplets at the bottom do not freeze as much. But I managed to get a kind of a nice panning effect, like on the first left, the left top photographs and the left bottom one. So you get a reasonable panning effect. At the same time, you don't completely lose the background. So here I was trying to experiment in trying to see, okay, to what extent do I have to get rid of the background in the panning. So this one was another series of experiments I did at the same place. So the top one, I saw this soccer player, he was actually doing it. So I tried actually panning on him and seeing what I could get. The right hand the person I did it, they were actually going around in this track, and so I kept on actually taking photographs. This one came reasonably well. So it was 1/13th of a second matrix metering in this particular case, because I want to get the whole picture in nice, with a nice exposure. And then you get a reasonably nice panned effect here. And the bottom two also, once I actually got to know that, yes, I could do it, I went down to 1/15th of a second, ISO at 100, and I managed to get a reasonably good panned effect with reasonable focus. That was the main thing. So on my camera, I actually had the back button focus. So I had to keep the focus on all the time while I was actually panning. So that was important to keep the focus of the object that you want. By the way, just one thing I forgot to mention is that in all of these situations, I've got the vibration reduction switched off. Because I'm not sure exactly what the vibration reduction does when you actually do these kinds of things. And that's one of the set of experiments I want to do later on. Now, one problem here was I was just mentioning Sam earlier on, that I tried to use the neutral density filter so that I have a reasonably larger aperture, so kind of throw off the background a little bit more out of focus. But what I found was the focusing was extremely difficult with the neutral density filter. It just wouldn't focus. Now, it may be my camera, because which is not, I mean, it's a mediocre camera. So the second thing is that, in spite of the fact that I don't have, I have a f32, the background is still reasonably out of focus because of the panning effect. So you need to kind of open up the aperture. Probably does not exist as much as I thought it might be. So this one, this is panning and zooming is finished now. So here's another one that I found inside the camera, double exposures. Now, I've never used double exposures. I actually used double exposures with great difficulty when I had film cameras. I mean, that was a great thing. You actually crank the thing, the film doesn't advance, you take another photograph with the same exposure. That was a really difficult thing to do, but now you can do it much more easily. So except for the right-hand one, right-hand bottom photograph and the top left photograph, the other two are double exposures. So I take a photograph with a darker photograph first and the more lighter photograph later on. That's how I found out that it works better. Both exposures actually come together to actually give you a raw image within the camera. Now, there are two possibilities available in my camera, at least. One is double exposure, the other one is the image overlay. So the other two are, you take two images, raw images, and then the camera allows you to actually blend them like you would do in a Photoshop, but within the camera. And you can actually adjust the level of luminosity on the two photographs to get a reasonable effect. So the top one on a plank, I thought I'll do a black and white just to see what happens. The effect is not that great, but the bottom one is not bad. The other two are pretty good, actually. The one with the keyboard and the notation came out pretty well, much better than I expected. So, I mean, these are, again, I think that, as I said, for the last so many years, I've been using digital cameras. I haven't used half of it. Now, there are other things that are possible on the effect side of the camera. I haven't tried them. I'm intending to work on them and see what could be done. So I haven't done any of those things. So there are a lot more other effects that can be done. As I said, like repeating flash with water dripping and such like. So again, only the imagination is limiting our creativity here. So thank you very much. That's about it. And so questions and answers now.